Hi everyone, welcome back to this webinar series on Kubernetes. This is Janakiram playing your host today. It's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Sebastian from Bitnami. Sebastian joins Bitnami from an acquisition, which is Skipbox, where he was building a variety of tools for the Kubernetes ecosystem, including the most popular cabin app that's very popular among the mobile users. And he's also involved in the Kubeless, the serverless platform built on top of Kubernetes. And today he's going to walk us through Kubeapps, a simplified deployment model on Kubernetes. So I want to thank Sebastian for accepting our request and joining us today for the webinar. Sebastian, welcome to Cube.live, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I'm currently in the US, so I don't know where everybody is from, where everybody is joining from. But welcome and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I'm presuming that you can hear me well, and Jenny will moderate if there are any technical difficulties. As Jenny said, my name is Sebastian Guesgen. I'm originally French. Currently, I'm the Senior Director of Cloud Technologies at Bitnami. It means that I oversee all the Kubernetes efforts at Bitnami. And I'm going to talk to you about Kubeapps. Kubeapps is Kubernetes application. It's a contraction, Kubernetes application, Kubeapps. It's all open source. And I'm going to explain you in details what that is, and mostly I'm going to give you a demo. Okay, so I only have a few slides. I'm mostly gonna give you a demo. If you are not familiar with Bitnami, I'll just say a few words about Bitnami. Bitnami has been packaging applications for almost 10 years now, and we're actually famous for being the leading provider of applications in the AWS marketplace. So if you go to the Amazon cloud and you go to the marketplace, you'll see a lot of Bitnami application. Same thing on the Google Cloud Launcher, on the Azure marketplace, the Huawei Cloud, the Dutch Telecom Cloud. So our main business is to work with cloud providers and to provide them with a marketplace so that their own users can launch a lot of applications. And I think you'll see that it makes sense for us to be working on Kubernetes and Kubeapps because of all this past that we have. So here you go. What is Kubeapps? So Kubeapps is open source. I'll show you it. I'll show it to you on GitHub. It's a package agnostic application dashboard or application launchpad for Kubernetes. What that means is that we are building a dashboard which gives you single-click application deployment on Kubernetes. Okay, and the premise is that you can have access to a Kubernetes cluster. You can provision a Kubernetes cluster. It's actually relatively straightforward. Oops, I should close Slack. It's relatively straightforward, especially if you use some of the cloud provider services. You can get access to a Kubernetes cluster easily. But once you have a Kubernetes cluster, you need to deploy applications. So how do you deploy applications on Kubernetes? You can write manifest, so either YAML or JSON file, or you can use something like Helm, which is a package manager for Kubernetes, or you can use something like Kubeless if you're more into a serverless paradigm, or maybe you want to use your own packaging, or you want to use more of a declarative workflow. There are lots of different ways to deploy applications and manage them. So with Kubeapps, what we're trying to do is to provide a one-stop shop so that whatever package format you're using, you can launch your apps on Kubernetes with it. Why we're doing this at Bitnami? Clearly, it's because of what I said at the beginning. We have a long history of packaging applications with package application for local machines, for virtual machines, creating OVA formats. We are packaging applications for the cloud. We have lots of containers on Docker Hub, on Quay.io, and so on. And we're also doing functions because we see this as the next step in application architecture. So when you look at this entire spectrum of application format, we want to help our customers basically migrate from one format to another. And we want to do this also on Kubernetes. So whatever the format of the app that you want to deploy on Kubernetes, we want to be able to help you. So what is Kubeapps? Well, Kubeapps is, website, kubeapps.com, and you'll have access to the software from there, from the website. It's led by us, Bitnami, but it's definitely all open source, and we're looking for contribution and partners and so on. So, please look at the GitHub and don't be shy in filing issues and so on. But you'll see that on the website, there is also at the top right, I'll show it to you in the browser, there is a link called Hub. This is an instance of what's called Monocular that we have modified so that you can actually rate application, you can leave comments on application and so on. So it's very much meant to be the Docker Hub of Kubernetes application, okay? It's hub.kubeapps.com. That's the graph that you're seeing here. This is going to change drastically because we are engaging with quite a few customers and then people in the community and so on. So we are going to change the layout of this to make it much better. But that's the idea here, and you can browse application. Right now charts, but you can also browse functions. So it's going to be a function repository as well. And then there you have all the social features. Here you see that the Artifactory application from JFrog has 16 stars already. BuildKite has 1. So you can log in and then star and leave comments on the apps. Okay, so it's fairly straightforward. So what I thought I would do is actually give you a demo of all of this. That's much more interesting than going through slides. So let me see if there are some questions in the chats. No, okay. Starting now. So I have access to a Kubernetes cluster, kubectl get nodes. You should be able to see this. I have a 5-node cluster. It's 1711, and it's on GKE. It's a Google Kubernetes Engine cluster. Okay. And what I've done is that I've installed the Kubeapps CLI. So if you go to the website, you'll see that one component of Kubeapps is a CLI. I've installed this CLI, and if you look at the usage of the Kubeapps CLI, you'll see that the first command is kubeapps up, and it says install Kubeapps components. There is a kubeapps down to uninstall everything, and then there is a kubeapps dashboard. Okay. So right now I've done the kubeapps up, so I can actually look in the kubeapps namespace. Let me do that at the top. I can look in the kubeapps namespace, and you'll see what we have. But it also installed a few things in the Kubeless namespace, right? So the CLI is a way to bundle all the components to basically install Kubeapps and help you supercharge your Kubernetes cluster. So what do you find? So you find Kubeless, that's the bit that you need for serverless. You'll find an ingress controller, and I'm taking it a little bit for granted here that you're familiar with Kubernetes. I'm hoping you're familiar with Kubernetes so that you see what I'm showing you here. So there is an ingress controller, the default backend. There is the Kubeless UI, and then there is the Kubeapps dashboard. There is an API proxy. There is a UI, and then there is a database, MongoDB. Okay, so all of this was installed with a single command, kubeapps up. And now that this is installed, you can do kubeapps dashboard. And what I would like actually is that I would like to open this. Hold on. I would like to open this in the other window. There you go. Let me open it here because I have opened already a few things. So what this does is that it actually runs a proxy locally, and you can access the dashboard on localhost. Okay, so it says localhost, but don't be fooled. That's because there is a proxy running. We can go back to the proxy here. You see the proxy running, and the reason we're doing this is that because it helps a little bit with, a lot with security access to the UI. So what do you see here? You see all the applications that's standard, monocular, and chart. So what we can do, we can search for a chart, for example, Minio, the object store. And because this is deployed inside the cluster, we now have a single click deployment. So I say deploy Minio, and it deploys Minio. And if I go and I search for WordPress, I click on WordPress, and it's going to install WordPress. Okay? So now you see that in my deployments, just with 2 clicks, thanks to the Kubeapps, I've installed Minio and WordPress. We'll get back to it. The one thing that's different compared to the standard monocular is that now you have a link functions, which links you to the UI for launching functions. Okay, so the serverless setup we're using this system called Kubeless, which is also open source. So here, let's say, we call it Johnny, Johnny.live, and let's do a Python function. We create, okay, so it's just gonna say hello, and maybe we don't say hello world, we say hello Hyderabad. Okay, and we have to click on the little cloud at the bottom that says save. Okay, once we do this, what's going to happen? You see the Johnny function. Kubeless underneath is actually going to create a deployment, which will create a pod, expose the function as a service, and now you see that when I say click on run function, I have the response here at the bottom right that said hello Hyderabad. Okay, so very simple, function creation. Let's go back to the the charts here. What do we have in the charts? Now you see that the chart is actually made of a secret here, a config map for the configuration of Minio. There is a persistent volume claim. There is a service. There is a deployment. Okay, so there are lots of things that make up this Minio deployment. At the end of the day, the service, you see that it was a load balancer type service, and I'm on GKE. So this load balancer type service was, I would say, met, and Google gave us a public IP address, which is a load balancer type IP address. And in this Kubeapps, now the link appears on the left side. So if I click on this, I now have access to my Minio application. Okay, notice the UI. You can actually access this. Let me give you 2 minutes. You can actually access this because it's publicly available. You don't have the access key and the secret key. Okay, so you won't go too far, but you can get to it. Let me get a little bit of my coffee. So 35.203.176.199 port 9000/Minio/login. You won't go anywhere because the key is actually randomized, stored in a secret, so you won't be able to access anything. Okay. If we go back and we go to the WordPress, same thing. We got a public IP address. So if I click on it, now you see that I have a WordPress blog. Okay. And you can also access it. So that's the magic in that particular case of charts. And if you look at the function here, that's the magic of Kubeless. Everything bundled as Kubeapps. So this is great. But what I wanted to show you, okay, is that since we have the dashboard UI experience, but if you don't like dashboard and you don't like UIs, you can actually fall back on the CLI and you'll be with the more native Kubernetes experience. So here you see the Blackboard MariaDB, the Blackbird WordPress. Those are the two pods that make up the WordPress deployment. And then there's this right kangaroo that makes up the Minio deployment. Okay. This one here, that pod, Jani, that's the Kubeless function. The function that we typed in the Kubeless UI got injected into that pod. In particular, if you install the Kubeless CLI, you can list the function, Kubeless function ls. Let me make that, here you go. So you can fall back and start using the CLI, okay? In that particular case, in that directory, I have a little function to get the price of cryptocurrencies. So I'm going to copy this and show you here how you deploy a function from the CLI. Here you say kubeless function deploy. You're deploying a function. This is very much like what you're doing on AWS Lambda or Google Cloud Function. You give it a name. You say, where is the function? So you point to like a Python file, or if you're a Node person, you deploy a Node.js function or even .NET Core function. The handler is a link of crypto is the file name, and handler is the function name inside the file. You specify what type of language and how the function is triggered. So we do this from the command line, okay? I do this from the command line, I list my function, and now you see that I have a function here, a second function. Get pods, and you see that I have a pod that's now launching. You see it's not ready. It's actually running an init container, and that init container is actually installing the dependencies. So now it's running. We can go back to the Kubeless UI, and we see that we not only have the Jani function that you can still call, and it says hello Hyderabad, but you also have the crypto function, and we can send it a post message, and we can say crypto Bitcoin. Let's get the price of Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is currently at 14,567 US dollars. Okay. If we want the price of Monero, $409.96 US dollars. Okay. So it's a little bit of a funny demo. It's not, it's not super useful because this function is actually calling another API. Okay, so you could call that API, more directly. But what I wanted to show you is that the Kubeapps CLI installs everything that's needed. The Helm part, also something called Sealed Secrets. It installs Kubeless. Everything has been bundled for you with a very convenient CLI. Then you have a dashboard experience, but you can also fall back on the CLI experience. Okay. Let me show you the the repo a little bit, the hub, and then I want to finish by showing you another function, another kubeless function. Okay, so the Kubeapps CLI with the dashboard and also the hub, all of this is available on github.com/kubeapps. Okay, everything is open source. So the dashboard that I showed you, which is this one here, let's go back to there you go. This dashboard with the link for the functions and so on, and the link for the repositories, because you can add repositories, so you could have your own chart repository. Oops. This is here, open source in the dashboard. The CLI is kubeapps/kubeapps. So you'll see that it's written in Go. That's the Kubeapps CLI. And then, when we install things, everything that we install, okay, all the components that make up Kubeapps are defined in the kubeapps/manifest. repository. And what you'll see, which is very interesting, is that we've decided to write all those components as JSONnet manifest. So for example, the installation of Kubeless here, it's actually a JSONnet based manifest. And when we do a build of this, basically, we can generate the YAML, okay, that make up the actual end state, manifest. So those manifests defined in JSONnet, they actually make their way into the Kubeapps CLI. I think they end up in static, I think. Yeah. So they end up here. So here you see, a big YAML file, but this is auto-generated from the JSONnet stuff. And that comes from our expertise working with Heptio on Quesonet. It's a long story. Maybe that should be another webinar. So Kubeapps, the CLI, all the manifests are under manifest. The hub, I haven't showed you the hub. I'm going to show you this. It's here, Kubeapps hub. And then we have, various like little microservices, like for the chart metadata, the rating service, the authentication, all of those are here. Okay, so we would love to get any comments, any feedback on this. If you go back to the Kubeapps website, you obviously have the link towards the GitHub that I just showed you. You have links toward documentation, and then at the top right here, you see that there is a link that says Hub. If you click on Hub, that's where you go to, what used to be the kubeapps.com website, but we modified it. We added social features. So you can log in. You see I'm logged in at the top right, run seb, I'm logged in. And what this gives me is that it gives me the opportunity to Minio. I can star Minio. Let's star Minio. So I start the repo Minio, and then I can go, at the bottom, and I can say, I love Minio. It deployed very fast during the Cube Live webinar. Thank you. So you can leave comments. You can leave comments on your favorite, on your favorite chart, and get a little bit more of this social interaction with other community members and so on. So we're going to expand this functionality, and definitely would love feedback. I think one of the things we want to do is be able to let people contribute their own chart repo or their own type of application, not only charts, but maybe functions. So if you want to add a function to the hub, you should be able to drop a new function on the hub, so that we have more of an interaction, and we can find a way to grow all of this. Okay. So that's about it about Kubeapps. One thing I did want to show you is Kubeless. Kubeless is really my little baby these days, and I think that Kubernetes serverless is going to become a new paradigm for Kubernetes applications. We're going to see a lot of new applications that are based more on a serverless mindset. And I wanted to show you another example here, which is a function that's going to send a tweet. So you're going to call that function deployed in Kubernetes, and it's going to send a tweet. The big challenge with serverless is what is triggering the function call. If you're just triggering the function via an HTTP call, there is nothing super exciting about it. You just have more or less a basic REST API, and you're calling get or post on an endpoint. You're just calling a function. But what would be way more interesting is if a function can be triggered when there is a message somewhere in the system. Okay, so you have multiple event sources. You have multiple things in a distributed, loosely coupled system. you have many different things that emit messages, okay? And now you deploy a function that's going to listen for some type of messages. And when there is such a message, then it executes the function, okay? So there are lots of ways to do event sources. By default in Kubeless, we have Kafka. So a message that's being sent to a special Kafka topic can get consumed by a function. But I'm personally working on using AWS triggers. So things like SQS, the queuing service, or Kinesis or SNS. You can use those systems, those AWS services, as event sources to trigger functions. So the example I want to show you, like to end this demo, is I'm going to deploy this function. We're going to be able to see it in the Kubeapps UI. But then the function is going to be triggered when I'm going to send a message via Amazon SQS. Okay? So I know it's probably a lot of information, but bear with me. So here my function, I've put my function inside a YAML file, which looks like a Kubernetes manifest. You see the API version. The kind is function. That's because Kubeless uses custom resource definitions. Okay, and then you have the function. You'll see that and then you have the function. It's a special function because if you see the keys, it's no worries. The image of this function is Kubeless SQS Python. It's what we call a custom runtime. So I'm going to create this function just by doing a kubectl create. What you should know also is that stored in a Kubernetes secret, I have my Twitter API keys, consumer keys, and so on. So I created a Twitter application. I've gotten some keys. All of this is stored in my in a Kubernetes secret. Okay, so let's reload the Kubeless UI, and we'll see that we have this function SQS tweet, which is pretty simple. You see that it's reading the secret to get the Twitter secret, and then the function itself is actually 3 lines. The function is called tweet. It's getting the body of the message, and then it's just posting it. Okay. So now what I can do is I can go to my AWS management console. I see that I have a Kubeless FIFO queue, first in, first out. I created it before. And then AWS has this nice little UI to send basic messages. So we can say, hello at, what is it, cube.live? I don't know if cube.live... Kubernetes serverless. And we say test. And then can I get my Twitter feed here? Oh yeah. So let's check my Twitter feed. Let's open my Twitter feed at the same time. So I'm going to send this message on the AWS SQS. Here you go. It's sent. The function should have been called, and I should see the tweet. Yeah, it's right here. But the cube.live probably doesn't work. So if you check my my Twitter feed, you'll see this hello cube.live. This is Kubeless. Okay. So the message was sent on AWS SQS, but it was consumed by a Python function deployed on my Kubernetes cluster, and I have access to it through the Kubeless UI. I could have written the function directly through the UI and not through the CLI. Okay, so I think with this, I wanted to keep it short and really really focus on a demonstration. So I hope this was clear. I hope you liked it, you enjoyed it. Definitely check out kubeapps.com. If you like Kubeless, check out kubeless.io. It's also open source. And then Kubeless is in github.com/kubeless kubeless, and Kubeapps is in github.com/kubeapps. Okay. So let me see if there are, some questions. Oh, there is a questions here. Okay. So Gianni, I think I'm done. If I don't know if we have time for questions, or how can we moderate questions?
Yeah, there are just a few questions. Now, if you can look at the question box, there are a couple on secret management within Kubeapps, and there's a question on installing Kubeapps on Google Cloud. I think you can address both of them, and then we can wrap up the webinar.
I'm not seeing the questions. The box is
Oh, okay.
empty.
So let me read them out. So, how do I install Kubeapps on Google Cloud?
Right. Okay. So Kubeapps on Google Cloud. You go to github.com/kubeapps. You go to the release page, and you see Kubeapps 02.0, and you have it for Linux, you have it for Darwin, you have it for Windows. You download the CLI. You put it in your path, and then you just run Kubeapps up. The manifests of all the components that it installs are embedded inside the binary. So you see that here it's going through the install, but since I already run it, it's actually not doing anything. So I've done the Kubeapps up, and it tells you everything that's been installed. I could actually kill everything. Kubeapps down. You see that it says deleting, so I'm deleting everything. And now I'm cleaning all my setup. So Kubeapps is tested on GKE and on Minikube. Okay, I know that it's been tested. It's been used on the AKS, the Azure container service, but we're not testing it on Azure. So if I do kubectl get ns, you see that the Kubeapps namespace is being terminated. And then if I look at the pods, well, I actually removed Kubeapps, but I didn't remove the apps. So you see that my functions are still there. The pod for the function is still there. The Minio and the WordPress are still there. So the apps are still running, but I've removed entirely Kubeapps, the Kubeapps component. Okay. So basically, github.com kubeapps and release page, and download the latest release.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sebastian. I have a question. So, as a Kubernetes enthusiast and someone who has been working on Helm and Tiller, I'm just curious, how are Kubeapps related to Helm and Tiller?
So when you install Kubeapps, it actually installs Helm. So if we do a Kubeapps up now, let's see if that's going to work. So Kubeapps up. So Bitnami was the only maintainer of a project called Monocular, which is in github.com/kubernetes-helm/monocular. We were almost the only maintainers, and we wanted to do more things with it. Like you're seeing now, that's just the beginning now. But we wanted to have a little bit more freedom, so we started working on it as Kubeapps. And when you launch Kubeapps, you'll see that you'll see this one, the API here, the Kubeapps dashboard API. You'll see that it actually has two pods. Don't worry about the crash loop back off. It recovers. You see that this dashboard API pod has two containers. One of them is the tiller pod. Okay. The one thing that we did, the reason why we installed it that way is because we want it to be extremely secure. So the tiller that's inside this pod is only serving on localhost, so you cannot reach it from the outside. Okay. But when you go through the UI, it's actually talking to the tiller inside this pod. It's a security concern.
Got it. Got it. So is Kubeapps another layer of abstraction on top of Helm?
Helm is one of the components, but you see that there is there's Kubeless, and then there is also something which is called sealed secret. So we're working on bringing new types of applications like the ones coming from the app registry. It used to be called KPM, but there are lots of people that have developed different types of package format. And we want Kubeapps to be able to support all of those packages. Helm being one of them, but not the only one.
Great. Got it. Thank you so much, Sebastian. Thanks for taking time to join us and demo Kubeapps. It's been a very interesting, very useful session. So with that, we come to the end of this webinar. We'll update you on the next possible webinar, the topic and the schedule, so stay tuned. I hope you found this useful as much as I did. So stay tuned and we'll update you on the upcoming webinar. Have a great week ahead. And Sebastian, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Gianni, and thank you everyone for joining.
Great.